I think we have hit that moment that Marxism predicts, where capitalism has created the technology for a communist system. So, what do you do when the technology arrives that should allow the boot to come off of people's necks? But if the boot comes off of people's necks, it's going to be at the expense of your power and status, because your power and status is built on their desperation. Well, then you got to go the other way toward techno feudalism. You've
Mm.
got to, in order to avoid the people being empowered by the technology, you have to control the technology and use it to actually disempower the population.
Things are going south way faster than I imagined.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, what do you expect from an administration that made all these big, bold promises? I mean, look, if they really wanted to do great things, they should have followed through with their promises on trying to end these wars. Instead, what we're seeing them do is they're doing double talk. They're speaking out of both sides of their mouths, and they're hoping that no one would notice. But this administration is the difference between the first one and the second one here is Trump has a lot of yes people, but there's no one there challenging him critically. And as soon as he makes a mistake, people are trying to cover up their mistakes with more and more lies. And what happens with lies? All lies are being exposed right before the American people, because this administration just doesn't understand the severity that, or the damages that not only the Biden administration left behind, but also Trump's previous administration left behind, including Obama's. All of these wars that we are seeing is a culmination of the failed neoliberal policies and investing into forever wars. And in turn, it's all coming home to roost, and we're all going to have to pay that huge bloody price. And that is more pain and suffering for working class families. And it's a sad thing to say, but this is where we're at.
What did I tell you guys following the election when we had our post-duopoly show? As post-duopolists, I look forward to the pendulum swinging more than anything else. The Democratic Party looked down and defeated, and trust me, they're not doing well.
Mm-hmm.
But now seeing Trump, seeing his base, I'm seeing MAGA people flee and bash Trump in a way I've never seen before, especially since the Palantir story.
Mm-hmm.
So every time the pendulum
Yes.
swings, MAGA, the same way with Biden, they will inevitably be disappointed. That is the exact same thing I told you guys after the election. And now this is a perfect opportunity for us to pick up the disappointed Trump supporters. Because a lot of these, Russ, do you have anything you want to add before I move on? Russ, you want to add anything?
Well, this is always the Achilles heel of these kind of banana republic autocracies, because when you put together a bunch of thieves, very quickly it becomes treasure of the Sierra Madre. You know, they all start turning on each other, and hey, did you get more crypto than I got? You know, the whole thing is just, it's such an unstable structure. You know, if you have a smart, competent autocrat, you might be able to sustain that for a while. But very often you get somebody like Trump who's just a clownish buffoon with a bunch of crackpots around him praising the dear leader in these grotesque Oval Office press conferences they hold. Yeah, that's not going to hold together. It's a complicated world. You know, Taibbi dropped an article about this morning, and he said, you know, there are two possibilities here. Either Trump signed off on a Biden era program and let it
Yes.
go
Yep.
ahead, and at that point, Putin has to say, oh, well, the policy really hasn't changed from the last administration. Or Trump didn't know about it, which at that point, Putin has to say, well, this guy's not running the show anyway.
Exactly. Well, here's what have we seen firsthand about the deep state, NSA, CIA? Yeah, you know, they're the ones running the show. We are the Western Roman Empire, where the emperor is nothing more than a figurehead, and the Praetorian Guard is putting in their guy in charge, or either that's a council of people. There's the last lion could have been JFK for all we know, and then after that, it's nothing but weak
That's what a
men
lot of people
who
say. Yeah.
who don't understand, or weak men who are just yes men. You know, they put on the show looking like they're leaders, but you know, Joe Biden being a senile old goat, I mean, Ronald Reagan, there he is. There was another guy who was suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's. It's just no one probably noticed it. There wasn't as many cameras or smartphones. And Russell, you talked about monarchy and authoritarianism. Look at this one video that came out by Case Study QB a while back about Curtis Yarvin wanting American democracy to be replaced by a form of monarchy by a CEO. I mean,
that's their game plan. That's their game plan. They're following exactly Curtis Yarvin's playbook. J.D. Vance is an acolyte of Yarvin, Peter Thiel, all these guys are looking at Yarvin stuff. Everything they're doing with flooding the zone, doing illegal stuff, forcing them to take it to the courts, defying court orders, that's all Yarvin's playbook. Basically, destroy the system and have fascism was really neo-monarchy. For millennia, the pattern had been strong central leader.
Right.
The idea of that being based on genetic lineage was just outdated in the modern era. Fascism replaced it. It's just a modern version of monarchy. Yarvin wants to take it to the next level of, okay, well, what would that be now? A CEO, an all-powerful chief executive, the whole fascist with the epaulets, that's passe now. We do it as a CEO.
Yeah, and
look at Europe. Europe is literally governed by bankers. And like Germany's prime minister, BlackRock, Maloney from Italy. I think she's from Goldman Sachs, if I'm remembering right. She's from a banker.
Oh, is she? I didn't even know that.
No, I didn't know that either.
Maloney?
Emmanuel Macron. He comes from a line of bankers. Like the UK is ran by a bunch of billionaire and millionaire oligarchs. Like this is what we've been predicting. This is what socialists predicted, because the criticism of people who critique socialism, the Soviet Union, because they said they don't want a giant centralized government. What we would say is we want an actual coherent government, because no matter what your central planning model is, no matter how you design your economic system, there will be that central economic planning system. What we have right now is the technocrats implementing technofascism. The CEOs, they are the government. We in a position right now where the capitalist class and the private capital as a whole is stronger than just general government. So they run the show. This is exactly what we predicted. And the person who was right, the person who was vindicated, the person who was calling out like Musk, for example, was Steve Bannon. But I said many times on this show, people like Steve Bannon and people like Tucker and Candace Owens, they was never the influential wing of MAGA. Nope. They were the people that was running cover for the true Zionist, Occupy techno bros that occupy MAGA. So what people like Steve Bannon, Candace Owens, and Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones, what they were saying to themselves so they can sleep at night, they're saying that Trump is being manipulated. This is what Trump is getting bad info from his advisors. And that's how they're justifying the fact that Trump is continuing Biden's policy on Ukraine.
Yeah, if only Donald Trump knew, his feeling for the common person is so great, he would surely do something about this.
He won't.
There's no other explanation for why he would not intervene.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. It's also for us. But what did we all say was going to happen, especially after the election? And that is, it was still going to be the same system. There might be some subtle differences, but the war wasn't going to end in 24 hours. As much as we would love to see the war end in 24 hours, it was never going to end in 24 hours. A ceasefire in Gaza, good luck. There's going to be the Riviera in the Middle East, only except its foundation is built on blood. And then, of course, you have potential conflict with Iran, Lebanon, Syria, and wherever the hell else, because apparently this administration has done nothing to mitigate or even silence the fires that are happening in the Middle East. The genocide is happening right before our eyes, gentlemen. And what is Trump doing? Nothing. He's saying, oh, how sad it is that people are dying. Is it sad? Is it sad to you, Trump? Or is it, and to anyone else that said that Trump was going to end the wars, I would have loved if that was the case. but they're still ongoing, and we're still seeing men, women, and children dying in Ukraine, in Gaza, dying. And can Caesar raise his hand? No, he can't.
Yeah. I wanna correct something I said though, because I was thinking about the leader of the AFD from Germany, who was a Goldman Sachs executive. Maloney, her party is bankrolled by Goldman Sachs. That's what I was thinking of. Just want to make that quick correction. But I found this super interesting because you had Lindsey Graham, and he's been very open that he's going to reverse and be in open defiance of Donald Trump's Ukraine policy. And I just thought this was funny. Lindsey Graham calls for Graham to be arrested because he's visiting Ukraine. And for all the
He
people
was
who
there
claim that,
Friday,
yeah, you had the chief architect of the Ukraine proxy war, Lindsey Graham. And you have Mike Pompeo, who helped escalate the Ukraine conflict under Trump's first administration. They was in Ukraine the day before these operations. Ukraine in U.S. intelligence is tied to the hip, my friends. The idea that Trump didn't know about the attacks that Ukraine is launching on Russia as the Trump administration is engaging in peace talks, ask yourself this question. Why is the corporate media covering for Donald Trump?
It's good
Why
for
is
business.
the liberal corporate media working hard for Donald Trump to maintain his own illusion? Because you got to know U.S. intelligence teamed up with Ukraine and helped them with targeting. And they had this 1 year operation where they have multiple intelligence agencies coming together, and they wanted to convince us that Trump didn't know. That's designed to drag along the MAGA folks.
Oh yeah.
And give them. Go ahead.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's the same reason a guy who supposedly got shot in the ear doesn't have any chunk taken out of his ear, man. It's freaking.
What happened to it?
That's yeah. He got shot in the ear with a freaking pack of McDonald's ketchup. Is what he got on his freaking ear. Yo, the MAGA. This was traditionally. You go back, you look at the old '60s radicals, like these kinds of so-called conspiracy theories about the intelligence agencies manipulating the public. That was traditionally a left-wing analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're more commonly going to find that as among people who identify as right wing or conservative. That made them the main obstacle to the globalist agenda. And they knew they were not going to be able to sell the New World Order, the World Economic Forum, the Davos agenda with Harris. Those people would have you would have had January 6th all over the country under Harris if they tried to push that. You would have had every day would have been January 6th for 4 years if they had tried to sell it with Harris. So what do, man? You get this clownish game show host who
Yes.
doesn't give a shit about anything but milking the presidency for every penny he can
Mm-hmm.
find. And now you got this motherfucker, Justin Sun, sat him down, I think several years ago, and said, listen, you got the crypto thing all wrong. I mean, you got it right. But do you realize how much money you could make
And
as
then
the
he changed.
president if you market your own meme coin? And there's no real law against it, right? The
Yep.
laws have not caught up with that. Trump said, "Hey, you know what? You know what? Give me that ketchup." There you go. He's getting rich off of this, and the forces that he was supposedly fighting against, now they've got the main faction of the public that was wise to what they were doing and that might have resisted them. Because let's face it, those guys are armed. When I see the liberal class talking about how they're gonna go round up MAGA and all that, I'm like, Duck
Good
Dynasty
luck.
motherfuckers can shoot. Okay, like you're getting out over your skis there, chicken hawks. Yeah, man, they neutralized them. They not only neutralized them, they got them cheering for it. By the
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
time they really wake up, some of them are aware, so, like the Palantir thing.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are aware. Some of them are less cultish. Most of them, they're not. They're not going to wake up to it until AI has taken what jobs are left. And it's going to be too late.
Actually, I think you're right. It's not only is it going to be too late, but think about it, and I've been reflecting on like independent media and where we're going to be in the future, especially when you guys covered artificial intelligence and how real some of those humans could look. And the thing is, like, who knows if we are going to be around? And I'm not trying to be the bad guy here, as I think we're going to be gone, but with the technology coming out there, what is real and what is not real? People, normal people, regular people, they're not really watching our content. And not a lot of people are well aware of how they're being screwed over by their political system until a presidential election season. And even then, it is still too late. We are on the pathway where, how did this happen? It's sort of like one of those moral stories that you see from the Outer Limits or the Twilight Zone, where there's this technology coming in or whatever it is, this MacGuffin device people are using. And at the end of the episode, that you have a person plugged into a machine living in a fake reality, all the while everything that they're feeling is controlled, and that can happen. And the fact that people can say it cannot happen, look at this technology right now. This is like Star Trek technology where we're speaking to each other on screens.
Right.
This was unheard of in the 90s, and now here we are. And so what lies in store 10, 15, 20 years down the road, except maybe a Blade Runner 2049 dark future where yeah, that could be it. You have your sex bot that says you're a good Joe, and then your heart breaks.
I thought it's very funny. I saw some tech liberal CEO, bro. He was explaining how AI will create unemployment around 20 to 25% over the next few years. And then the response of every other capitalist was like, bro, will you shut the fuck up?
These people will be poor.
Because then immediately everyone's like, hey, no, he misspoke. He didn't actually mean it. We're not really going to say your job. So every once in a while, someone will tell the truth. But go ahead, Russ.
What's coming now? Now the white collar workers are about to experience what the blue collar workers experienced for the last 50 years. And what are they going to say? Learn to code? Now you're going to have the blue collar people saying to them, learn to weld, and they're not going to like it any better. But I think, going back to an analysis that will be near and dear to your heart, Nick, I think we have hit that moment that Marxism predicts, where capitalism has created the technology for a communist system. But all of the people who run our society have a vested interest in preventing a system like that from manifesting. So, what do you do when the technology arrives that should allow the boot to come off of people's necks? But if the boot comes off of people's necks, it's going to be at the expense of your power and status, because your power and status is built on their desperation. Well, then you got to go the other way toward techno feudalism. You've got to, in order to avoid the people being empowered by the technology, you have to control the technology and use it to actually disempower the population. That's the fight of this moment. That is really what's happening. Who controls this technology and to whose benefit?